Shao Kahn is my all-time favorite fighting game boss character. Seriously, nobody compares. And I've played a lot of fighting games, mind you. Like, I've played a lot of BlazBlue. That's might be my favorite fighting game franchise of all time, even though it doesn't contain my favorite boss. Played Marvel vs. Capcom. I've especially poured a lot of time into Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which is actually pretty impressive considering the game's lack of abundance of content. But the one I always seem to come back to is Mortal Kombat, which inevitably takes me back to Shao Kahn. So, why do I like this guy so much? Well, there are a few reasons. First off, I love his attitude. This is something some bosses have, but nobody does it like Shao Kahn. Like, in the original Mortal Kombat II, I think he might have been the first boss, at least the first one that I'm aware of, who would actively make fun of you in the middle of the fight while also being cheap as fuck. And I always thought that this was so cool. It's such a small thing, but in Mortal Kombat 2, when he wins a fight, in the Sega Master System edition of Mortal Kombat 2, I believe, I don't know if this was in the arcade version, when he won a fight, he would say, "I win," instead of announcing, Shao Kahn wins, which is what happens in Mortal Kombat 3. And then in the arcade version, instead of saying that anybody wins at all, unless he loses, when he wins, he just walks up to the opponent that he just beat and hits them with one of his taunts while just looking down at them like they're worms. It's so cool. It's one of my favorite things about him, and I don't think any other boss has really done something like that. It's very unique. And to me, I always sort of read that as fighting the game itself, which I know is something you can say about a lot of bosses. They're essentially tests of your skills leading up to that point. That is true. It was uniquely different in Shao Kahn's case because no other boss said, "I win," after they beat your ass. It was always the game announcing that the boss won. So when you fought Shao Kahn in Mortal Kombat 2, it felt like you were actually fighting the game. But this intro has gone on long enough. It's time to get to the main point of the video, which is character assassination, or character derailment, is a term I hope people watching this video are familiar with. But if it isn't, I'll do a quick rundown and define it, and then I'll provide an example so that we're all on the same page. So character derailment, according to TV tropes, is when an author has a certain idea for the narrative or story and is required to stretch the character's personality in a way that doesn't particularly fit with their established personality or their characterization. A good example of this can be observed in the TV show Angel, where main female lead Cordelia Chase, played by Charisma Carpenter, makes the decision to ascend to a higher realm to become one of the powers that be. This doesn't fit with her character for a myriad of reasons, especially up to this point in the story, and it ends up leading to a storyline that, while I personally find it enjoyable because I like dark drama, it wouldn't have happened without that initial decision being made, because that just didn't make sense for the character. The subsequent events of which only serving to further derail her to the point where a reveal I won't mention for spoilers cannot fix the damage that's already been done to her credibility. They amend this later by giving her the send-off she deserved in Season 5, but by that point, the damage had already been done. There is a pretty well-written article on the subject by Jennifer Cruzy that I'll be linking in the description of this video for anybody who's interested in checking it out, because it's a fascinating read that dives deep into Cordelia's character, and really, Angel, just as a show, deserves more exposure. Recent controversy about Joss Whedon aside. Now, you might be wondering at this point how this relates back to Shao Kahn. Well, to paraphrase the Fourth Snake's Wasted Plotential video on the subject, Shao Kahn is shown time and again to be a schemer, a patient and conniving individual who takes advantage of any and all opportunities presented before him. He doesn't always have the answer when presented with failure. It was Shang Tsung's idea to have the Outworld tournament, something that was shown both in the original timeline and the Netherrealm timeline that happens in Mortal Kombat 9 as a result of Raiden's reset of the time stream. And Kahn was just going to kill him before he suggested it, but he always capitalized on the events that took place in the plot and never missed a chance to gain something from it. In the Netherrealm timeline, Shao Kahn is an incompetent boob who couldn't plot a route out of a driveway if his life depended on it. The same thing could be said of Shang Tsung, technically, me, even though he still comes up with the Outworld tournament idea. But this video is just supposed to be about Shao Kahn, so that's what we're going to focus on. So I think in order to get my point across, I'm going to summarize the events of the games that he has a direct involvement with up to Mortal Kombat 11 to try and articulate the point that I'm trying to make. I know that the fourth Snake has done a pretty good job of that already, but I'm pretty passionate on the subject of Shao Kahn because he's my favorite character and I don't like seeing my boy get done dirty the way that he's gotten done. So I'm hoping I might be able to add some new insight or at least restate what's been said in a more personal kind of way, I suppose. So basically I'm just going to try and illustrate the point that he's not the person he was in the original timeline and sort of articulate how he was turned from an all-powerful, scheming, conniving manipulator to a brute with no intimidation factor or really any agency. Not that he's the only character who's subject to this. Now, why am I doing this? Well, because I'm angry about the constant disrespect he gets, and I want to complain. So, I'm gonna complain. There you go. Mortal Kombat II. I've talked a lot about Shao Kahn in this game already, so I'll try to keep it brief. I've already gone on a lot about the way that the game made him feel big. He was the announcer for the game, so when you fought him, if you beat him, there was literally no announcement that you won because Shao Kahn was the announcer, so there was just no word spoke. When he won, he'd say, "I win" in the Sega Master version, and then in the original arcade and the 3DO versions, he would just stroll right up to the opponent and he'd laugh at them. The intro shows that he's the big mastermind, the ruler of Outworld, and the master of Shang Tsung, the final boss of the previous game, and this gave him an important weight that made him feel massive. Shang Tsung was afraid of him. He begged and pleaded for his life, and in the end, he was able to save his life by coming up with an idea that the Emperor agreed to. Put him in the front lines so that even if the champion managed to get past his fighters a second time, he would have to face him. A challenge that seemed insurmountable. So really in this game there's not much to him yet. He's big, he's imposing, he's powerful. He commands the legions of Outworld that Shang Tsung is a part of, but there's not much that speaks to his intelligence or his tenacity just yet. A couple of addendums here real quick. First off, Mortal Kombat 2 was released on the Sega Genesis, not the Sega Master System or the Sega Mega Drive. And in Mortal Kombat 2, Shao Kahn both says, "I win," and he'll taunt the opponent after a victory. I played a hacked version of the game that lets me play as him, and that was what I observed. I've never seen him do it in the arcade or the 3DO version though, so I partly still stand by what I said. Okay, so now we move on to Mortal Kombat 3. Shao Kahn is back, and he's got a scheme cooking. 10,000 years in the making. He's held onto the soul of his dead wife, whom he took from the realm of Addenia after he conquered it, giving it to Shang Tsung and the Shadow Priests to resurrect in Earthrealm. Under normal circumstances, he isn't allowed entry into Earthrealm without first winning 10 consecutive Mortal Kombat victories. But, just in case it didn't work out and he somehow lost, he had this plan lying in wait for millennia. This is really the first example we get of his intellect and his cunning. Ever since the former queen of Addenia, Sindel, died, he kept her soul just in case he needed it to give the ultimate middle finger towards the Elder Gods who created Mortal Kombat to stop his conquest to begin with. And as we can see from the intro here, it clearly worked. Shao Kahn absorbed the souls of everyone in Earthrealm except for a select few fighters, and Raiden could no longer interfere because Earthrealm had merged with Outworld, making him powerless. But then he's defeated by Liu Kang, he explodes, and he goes to Outworld to recover from exploding. Yeah, I would need a break after that too. Yeah, so after walking off, Shao Kahn is no more. He decides to go back to Outworld to nurse his wounds, while Shinnok does his thing in Mortal Kombat IV. And I don't know if this is confirmed. I can't find a source for it, but I've seen it referenced multiple times. Apparently, Shinnok didn't want to invade Earthrealm while Shao Kahn was still around because he thought he was too powerful, so Shao Kahn's stronger than an Elder God? So there's not really anything to mention about Mortal Kombat 4 since Shinnok is the main antagonist of that game. The only real reference we get to Shao Kahn that I'm aware of is a certain ending from a certain character that I'm not going to bring up. So for all two of you Reiko fans out there,
Cope.
So now we move on to Deadly Alliance, where
their combined strength, they plotted to overpower the only two beings who could prevent their total domination of the two realms. The first was the Emperor of Outworld, Shao Kahn. In a false show of allegiance, they sprung their attack.
holy shit, he's dead. Damn. Maybe if he thought that an alliance between two sorcerers who are clearly untrustworthy wasn't going to pan out very well, if only there was a game or some form of media that demonstrated that he didn't fall victim to that deception. While technically only a retcon because Shao Kahn and Goro were only added to the GameCube version of Mortal Kombat Deception, you have to consider it canon because of future installments such as Armageddon clearly showing that Shao Kahn is in fact still alive. There is a significant portion of lore that goes into demonstrating his intellect. His bio states that he predicted that his death was drawing near, so by making use of an unnamed artifact he collected during his conquests, he was able to create a clone of himself that took the blow while he escaped, even saving Goro at one point with the last bits of his strength. Goro, who had been supposedly killed in the war against Outworld, was so grateful to the former emperor that he pledged his allegiance to him again in exchange for the Shao Kahn regaining his favor once he reclaimed his throne from Onaga. Now, Onaga is interesting. The ultimate demonstration of how clever Shao Kahn actually was. At an unspecified point before he became the emperor, Kahn was sent by the gods to serve as Onaga's bodyguard and his advisor, basically the same role that Raiden plays for Earthrealm now. Kahn wanted Onaga's throne, but he was aware that Onaga was too powerful and he couldn't just take it out from under his feet. So he opted to slowly poison him and wait for his body to become weak enough that he could destroy him. Now keep in mind, Onaga is so powerful, he could have united the realms and reawakened the One Being as is demonstrated in the unfinished ending for the game. It took the protagonist of Deception, Shujinko, and the rest of the game's cast, amped by the Kamidogu, just to defeat him. Shao Kahn did it by himself, by being clever and tenacious. That's one of the greatest examples I can think of just how frightening the dude really was. It didn't matter that you were more powerful than him, he would still just be thinking 3 steps ahead on how to take you out, or in the case of Onaga's resurrection, just wait for somebody else to do it, and then reclaim the throne of Outworld atop his ashes, securing the best possible ally he could in Goro to bolster his forces and ensuring taking him out wouldn't be easy for anyone to attempt. Accomplishing all of this while moving undercover after faking his own death and having literally no power left. Like seriously, how did he ever lose? And now we move on to Mortal Kombat Armageddon. Now, it's confirmed here by series writer John Vogel that Shao Kahn was the one who killed Blaze. Now, in Armageddon and Mortal Kombat 9, Shao Kahn is very firmly back in his seat of power, despite the fact that Onaga is somehow still alive. He, Onaga, and the Deadly Alliance make a deal to overcome the rest of the fighters to claim the power of Blaze, with each one obviously plotting to turn on the other as soon as the opportunity presents itself, even saying as much. Now, the Mortal Kombat Armageddon intro seems to be at least partially canon if you consider the fact that Mortal Kombat 9 shows a very similar layout to that intro, even despite the fact that everyone is wearing completely different outfits. So in that intro, we see Kahn smacking people around with his Wrath Hammer until the pyramid shows up. At some point he climbs it and engages in a brief scuffle with Shang Tsung until he ends up getting dragged off by Onaga. Because we know Shao Kahn won, that means at some point he managed to kill Onaga and make his way back to the pyramid, because nobody was going to help him, so he had to have done it himself somehow. So that's really all there is to say about Armageddon, since he doesn't have that big of a presence in the story, and he doesn't show up again after making the deal with Onaga and the Deadly Alliance. But then we get to MK9, where everything changed. Now, I'm not as critical of this game as other people are, especially when it comes to the depiction of Shao Kahn in the game, because I like the fact that he's the be-all end-all baddie that Raiden has to stop above every other threat. Really, the more I think about it, the more my problems begin and end with Mortal Kombat 11. Really, gameplay-wise, Shao Kahn is pretty much exactly what I would want, save the invincibility frames, although I tell you, it's incredibly fun to do when you're the one playing as him and not the one having to fight against him. And he does actually have a decent depiction of his intelligence in this game. It's not very well demonstrated in the story, but in one of the DLC chapters, Scarlet, Shao Kahn created Scarlet to spy on Quan Chi and learn what his true intentions were. This may be a post-mortem addition, although Scarlet briefly appears in the story mode, so that's debatable, but it shows that he really didn't trust him, despite the fact that he seemed to go along with everything that he said. But as far as depictions of his competency are concerned, this is where it begins and ends. It's all downhill from here, folks. The biggest thing I want to emphasize is how Shao Kahn wasn't able to figure out why Sindel killed herself, despite having apparently contemplated that question for a millennia. According to Quan Chi, it was because the protections of the Elder Gods in Mortal Kombat were fiction, so she killed herself to put up a barrier that the Elder Gods could not provide. He explains all of this, and we're just expected to believe that Shao Kahn is so dumb that it just never crossed his mind. This is a tough pill to swallow, because supposedly this is supposed to be the same Shao Kahn who poisoned Onaga and took his throne. So how do we go from a guy who was able to figure out a way to defeat somebody who's roughly 5 times his strength to someone who can't figure out the answer to a simple question? So Quan Chi just feeds him all this bullshit, and he just goes along with it. He just buys it and goes along with his plan. Is he not the Emperor here? Is he not the one who's supposed to be calling the shots? Is he not the one who maintained his empire for over 10,000 years? So this is really where the assassination of his character starts to take effect, because Shao Kahn is supposed to be scheming and clever and cunning. He's smart and he's patient and he waits. He waits to enact his plans for the right time. But in this game, and for the remainder of the timeline, he's a petulant man-child, blames his failures on everybody but himself, especially Shang Tsung. He has a hate boner for Shang Tsung, and doesn't seem to have any concept of forward thinking.
You failed me too often, sorcerer.
Over a millennium, I've failed you twice.
That is unacceptable.
And let's not even mention,
Well done, sorcerer.
like, this is probably one of the worst examples of Shao Kahn being
A cross-eyed little nitwit.
But I'll cede the floor over to somebody who can explain why this is dumb a lot better than I can.
Well done, sorcerer.
Like, are you for real, bro? What kind of a fucking idiot would react this way? Not only does he make it clear Mileena was made on his orders, or at least with his express permission, he also then goes on a tirade about how he isn't Kitana's real father, and how he personally killed him. So of course she turns against him and her best friend Jade goes with her. What the hell did he expect was going to happen? And then, just to compound on this stupidity, he has her sent to the tower, for later transfer to the arena for execution, guarded by a person who was already proven to be a failure in such a role when she had backup. Other than to pad out Kung Lao's chapter with a wild goose chase, Kahn has no reason to do any of this. Dude, just kill her. Kill her right now, cave her skull in with your sledgehammer, then have Melina pose as her. It avoids the pointless transportation, allowing you to keep more competitors around for the tournament, and keeps those who might be loyal to Kitana on your side.
It just makes you wonder what the hell was going through the writers' heads. Shao Kahn goes through all of this trouble, presumably commissioning Shang Tsung to create Melina to begin with, for the express purpose of replacing Kitana as his daughter, just to keep the Kitana loyalists on his side, and then tells her, right to her face, that that is his plan, essentially, and then doesn't do it. No, he's going to have her publicly killed. Why? It boggles the mind, because this is even before Kitana is having any thoughts of betrayal that Shao Kahn is even aware of. So what was Shang Tsung wasting all of this time and resources doing?
Question for the god. Why? God!
It just doesn't make any sense, and these are only a few of the dumb things that he does. The video that I referenced earlier has another prominent example that I'm not going to go into here because it's already been covered sufficiently there. But suffice it to say, it's another prominent example of his short-sightedness, inability to see the big picture, which is what a ruler is supposed to do. They're supposed to see the big picture, and it ends up costing him the entire tournament and his plan. Oh, I'm sorry, Shang Tsung's plan. Nothing can be Shao Kahn's plan anymore because he's an idiot. Or better yet, it was probably Quan Chi's plan, because they gave every feat from both Shao Kahn and Shang Tsung to Quan fucking Chi. I'm sorry, do I sound annoyed? That's because I am. And guess what? It's only going to get worse. Mortal Kombat 11 is where all of these issues are brought to a boiling point. There is no excuse, and I mean no excuse, for how this game turned out. Specifically, how they did Shao Kahn. When I talk about how he got done dirty, and how his character was assassinated, this is what I'm talking about. And if it sounds like I'm getting amped up right now, well, that's because I am, because this game makes me furious. Now, please, don't get me wrong, I enjoy playing as him, and I'm glad he's on the playable roster, and I understand that to compensate for the fact that he's going to be a playable character on the roster, they had to dumb down his boss attributes. But that wasn't an excuse to make him completely worthless. He constantly ranks as low as possible on any tier list. Even the tier list that says there are no bad characters, he was on the low end of. And that just pisses me off, because the fighting game tryhards will talk crap for me playing this character, and I'll constantly be punished for not playing perfectly, even though I'm a casual player and I don't like to play professionally. And I hate the idea of Shao Kahn being the worst character in a game with Collector and Jackie fucking Briggs. And one last thing, his customization. I like some of these outfits, specifically I like certain colorings of these outfits, but why in the holy name of God, with all the crap DLC that Kano got, did Shao Kahn not get a single classic outfit despite him having every single one of his iconic masks in game? Now, all of that really has nothing to do with the actual point of the video itself. I'm just upset about it and want WB to be made aware of that. So let's move on to what I'm actually here for. I'm going to wrap this up by highlighting a couple of key moments in the story that I feel truly emphasize how far Shao Kahn has fallen as a character and a presence in the Mortal Kombat franchise, and then I'll go on to my closing thoughts. So this scene right here is one I've thought about a lot. I'll let the clip play to show you what did happen, and then I will explain why I think this was a dumb decision and how it could have been done different.
Raiden?
Shao Kahn?
General Kotal?
Kotal Kahn.
Kang? Pathetic fool! You pretend to my throne!
Aztec custom requires all refugees be offered assistance. I offer it to you, Shao Kahn.
I am no refugee. I am Khan of Outworld. Vacate my throne, or I'll soak these sands with your blood.
Not known stranger days.
So, Kotal Khan offers him hospitality, and he decides to throw it in his face and pick a fight for his throne. You might think that this is absolutely something that Shao Kahn would and probably should do, but think about his characterization and really consider that for a moment. Shao Kahn is in a strange time, completely surrounded by enemies, and it ends up biting him in the face because he did exactly what anybody might have expected that he would do. But he didn't get where he did in the original timeline by being predictable. He did it by being smart and outthinking his enemies. So let's do a little bit of role play for a second here. Let's pretend that I am Shao Kahn. Actually, let's not do that. I don't want to be too derivative. Let's just hypothesize for a second what a proper Shao Kahn characterization would do. He's standing in hostile territory, and Kotal Khan is offering him amnesty and shelter. So, I think it would have been a lot smarter, and what the original Shao Kahn would have done, to accept his offer and scheme to overthrow him from right under his feet. Like, just imagine the possibilities of that. He came into this time with a ton of his followers already with him. What if he accepted the offer, extended it to them, and then started inciting an insurrection while being completely protected by Kotal Khan's law? If you ask me, that's a way more interesting plot than what we got. And on top of that, it would be much more accurate to the Shao Kahn that we all know. But that's just me spitballing. Let's go ahead and move on to another scene I want to cover, this right here.
Surrender, or face the consequences.
Surrender on the brink of victory. You're as feeble-minded as Jehtt.
King Jehtt, the father you murdered and stole me from.
I wanted Jeht's wife, not his heir. I kept you only to appease your mother. Do not expect mercy this time.
I'll not inherit your cruelty.
Did it. Of course she did.
I'm gonna fucking kill you!
Yeah, okay, Simp Kang, keep it in your pants. Like, I don't need to explain this, right? I don't need to explain the problem here, the lack of consistency with the power scaling. I can just end the video here, right? And everybody would understand what I'm talking about. Okay, so to briefly summarize why this is such an L, this is impossible because this is supposed to be the same timeline where Katana was taken in by a bunch of lowly Tarkatans and taken to prison. So you're telling me that this person who couldn't even fight off two basic-ass Tarkatan guards who aren't even Baraka level is suddenly able to fight the Emperor of Outworld. This is literally the most pathetic that Shao Kahn has ever looked, and it doesn't matter that this was somewhat amended in Aftermath when he beat literally all of the most overpowered characters in the franchise for the new timeline, because by that point, the damage had already been done. By now, I hope I've constructed my point well enough. This video has gone on way longer than I thought, and honestly, I'm just glad to have it done and be able to put it up for everyone to see. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope I made some decent points, and I hope to get a discussion started in the comments maybe. That would be pretty cool. Not that this video will ever get popular. And that is how Netherrealm assassinated Shao Kahn. I want to thank the Fourth Snake for allowing me to use his clips for this video. And I want to thank tabmok on Twitter for answering my lore questions. And that's really about it. Thank you all for watching.
If Quan Chi were here, I'd hoist him by the ankles and split him through.